been a lot of rumblings about Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Miami Heat, and possibly the Detroit Pistons being that third team. What do you kind of think of just like the Pistons being a facilitator in a trade that I think is probably going to be the biggest trade of this offseason?
It's always interesting whenever you are involved in a trade that is going to inherently make another team better as well, especially when you're helping facilitate, another, superstar player, not leaving your conference, but just going to a different power within your conference. Right. I think part of the bet is that bringing in Tyler Herro into the fold is going to make you better enough to where it won't, that cancels out the effect that Giannis has, if he does indeed go to Miami. And it's going to be interesting, for one, because obviously, there's a lot of different conversations. It seems like if Tyler Herro does indeed go to Detroit, it's going to be by the way of a Giannis trade, because I don't see Miami necessarily wanting to give up Tyler Herro unless they go out and get a superstar in return. And I think Tyler Herro is, a lot like a lot of players we've seen throughout the league, where he is extremely skilled, highly talented, has come up big for Miami really ever since his rookie year. But a lot of times, some of it just comes down to, really the last couple of years, he's struggled with health. Last year he only played in 33 games. He played in 42 games in 23, 24. So there's been times where, Herro struggled to stay on the court, but also even when he has been on the court, it's like he's been like the number one or number two, scoring option in Miami alongside Bam. And I just don't think that's quite the role, quite the role for him. Whereas I think being in a system alongside, like a Cade Cunningham and having, like the best facilitator and the best, like the best playmaker he'll play alongside probably since his rookie year when he played with Goran Dragic, in Miami. And, he's someone who is able to slash, who's an efficient shooter and who's effective, kind of in multiple areas of the court offensively, has played in 2 finals, is experienced in playoff, basketball, but also comes from a culture that has high standards and knows how to be a professional. And so, like, is this like the flashiest name on the face of the planet? No. Is this going to be the final move that like Detroit makes? Also, I do not think the answer is yes there. So I do think Tyler Herro, if you are talking about what they're looking for, I think he fits that mold very well. And, again, there are risks when you look at the health and all those things, but you can say that about any player in the league at the same time. So I do think he checks a lot of the boxes for what the Pistons are looking for, though. And I would be intrigued to see him in a backcourt with Cade, because that definitely would be, the best, like the best playmaker he's played alongside. And again, he's, going into this year, he's going to be 27, he's going to be 27 years old, pretty soon. So, it's someone who's like heading into his prime, but also someone who's young enough to where you can still have like a ramp with him as far as, like being able to build off of, this upcoming season. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, but overall, like I wasn't necessarily surprised when I heard his name come up.
I feel like all the names that the Pistons have been interested or linked to me, I think he probably might be the cheapest from an asset and a player pool standpoint. And like you see all the mock trades, which there's a mock trade that Sports Illustrated posted that we're going to put on the screen in a couple of minutes. But honestly, when you kind of talk about the number 2 option, I think Tyler Herro does check a lot of boxes. And if you guys want to go back and listen to Trajan's press conference, which I know you were there, not the last one, but right after the season ended, he said, we're looking for more playmaking and we're looking for more, perimeter scorers. And Tyler Herro checks both of those boxes. He's a really good 3-point shooter. He can play with the ball in his hands. I think his playmaking is probably one of the most underrated parts of his game. I think from an offensive standpoint, he checks a lot of boxes. Now, defensively, that is an entirely different conversation. One could say that Duncan Robinson is a better defender than Tyler Herro. Tyler Herro is not a good defender. So there are risks with trading for Tyler Herro defensively. If you feel that like you can still kind of be like top 10, top 12-ish defensively with Tyler Herro in your starting lineup next to Cade in the backcourt, maybe, JB and this front office feel like they can kind of hide Tyler Herro in a sense where, Asar can switch, which I think it's going to be really taxing on Asar, not only trying to switch on whoever's trying to hunt Tyler Herro, but also trying to play weak side with Jalen Duren. I feel like Asar is probably going to be gassed a lot of the time, but I do like Tyler Herro as a fit. I think when healthy, he's a really good player. I think he could be a true number 2. I think playing next to Cade Cunningham, to your point, like he hasn't really played with a point guard probably since like Goran Dragic. I mean, Jimmy Butler's not really a point guard, but he's a pretty good playmaker forward in his own right.
A better passer than people give him credit for, but definitely, like if you talk about the quality of playmaking that Herro's played alongside with in his career, Cade's going to be the best, and it's not even close. And we saw how much of an effect that had for Duncan this last year, where he was able to just slide right into Detroit and be really successful right away.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you've seen the players that have come to Detroit and have career years. Like, I know this guy's under investigation, but Malik Beasley comes to Detroit and has a career year from 3. Like, he still holds the franchise record for the most amount of threes in a single season. Like, I could only imagine, like, Tyler Herro having a similar effect of, making 200 plus threes next to Cade Cunningham in a backcourt.
I think if you were to bring in, because to your point, defensively, obviously, that is not what Tyler Herro is known for, to put it kindly. And, I like you're talking about like schematically, like whether or not he would be able to be hidden. And like not to get too much into, because, this is the last topic of the show about like what we can learn from the Knicks. But like, if there is one thing you can say that the Knicks did do really well, it's hiding Jalen Brunson and finding the ways for him to still be effective on that end without being a total minus. So like, it's like, I think the bet that like the calculated bet that Trajan would be making in that light is if you were to have, say, like Asar Thompson alongside him and Cade, those are 2+ defenders, Asar literally being the best perimeter defender in the league. So, like as far as like being able to like plug holes and like, like probably like execute switches that, like 70% of wing guard combinations wouldn't be able to execute, you probably are going to be able to, because Asar can just close gaps that other players can't. So, like I think that's something that, it is definitely worth considering in and of itself. But also, I think if you're looking at, like something that, like Tyler Herro would bring, and I think would be like a major positive is like he's someone who has had to learn how to run the offense himself in Miami. And, like if you're talking about having someone that you feel comfortable with having Cade on the bench for extended periods of time to be able to give him that energy to perform in these postseason games, like it looked like, like obviously there was the health stuff and all those things that came up, but like Cade just looked worn out by by the end of this postseason run. And so if you can have someone like Tyler Herro who can effectively run the offense for like 5 minutes and a quarter if you need him to, like that would be a massive difference when you talk about the energy that Cade is able to provide down the stretch of a game. And that could be the difference between playing in the conference finals and going home.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, when you kind of just talk about like the flamethrower that he is, I mean, like I know Pistons fans probably know who Tyler Herro is, but if you guys want to go watch one of the games that just kind of popped in my head, it was JB's first year. It was that crazy in-season tournament game where Eric Spoelstra took a timeout. But you remember, like Tyler Herro was just making 3 after 3 after 3. Like, I think that's one thing that Detroit has been missing is just like getting that bucket getter, getting someone like if you need a 3 in a quick second, like that's Tyler Herro. Like he can definitely get it going when he's feeling it. And honestly, I'm not really too opposed to the idea. I did mention a couple of minutes ago there was a Sports Illustrated mock trade. I did want to go over that with you as well because there's been a lot of reporting on this, is like who could be involved in this trade and who couldn't. So I want to give Sports Illustrated a big shout out for this mock trade. So let's break it down for people that are watching or listening right now. So in this 3-team trade with the Milwaukee Bucks, Miami Heat, and the Detroit Pistons, the Bucks would get Karis LeVert, Ron Holland, Marcus Sasser from the Pistons. From the Heat, they would get Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Khalil Ware, and 3 first-round picks from the Miami Heat. Their 13th overall pick in this year's draft, a 2030 first-round pick, and a 2032 first-round pick, all unprotected. Obviously, the Heat get Giannis, and the Pistons get Tyler Herro. So, I mean, like, just the framework with this trade, like, what do you kind of think of it?
I think that's an appropriate framework if you're talking about compensation for Tyler Herro. I think Trajan has shown, if anything, they want to move up in the draft. They don't want to move down or out of the draft. And so I think them including that type of draft compensation in this type of trade would probably be a non-starter. Ron obviously is someone that I know you and I have been really high on for a while. And it's not one of those things where it's like, I think they should be looking to move off of him actively or anything like that. But I do think it is notable that he wasn't really able to carve out much of a role this postseason after, he wasn't really able to do the same in year one. I think some of that, like Ron has a contagious energy and plays with a lot of emotion, which is a blessing, but also a curse. And especially when you get into quick foul trouble, like you did in parts of the postseason, when you're making mistakes and compounding them, I think those are things that we saw kind of over time. Whereas I think you have to look at someone like Herro, where it's like, he is a lot more ready to give you that, like that consistent ball handling and scoring and playmaking. Whereas a guy like a Marcus Sasser, I know, who's someone that we've seen spurts of really good play as well, but nothing consistent enough that you can really rely upon and something that you can depend upon. And Karis LeVert, I mean, if we're being honest, he did not have a good season with Detroit last year. There, you can look at a lot of different reasons as to why, but the point is he just wasn't what they needed either. So I think, like this financially, like makes the deal reasonable. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, but it doesn't look like, like salary wise between these three guys, I think Detroit's salary would increase, but I don't think it would be by much. Bringing in Ty, I think he makes about like 30 million or 32 million. And I know Karis is like, I know Karis has like 14 and a half, but I think it's partially guaranteed. So I'm not sure what that would look like. I know Ron was a top 5 pick, so obviously his number isn't small. And then like Marcus is on like a $2 million or like a $5 million deal next year. So like these aren't like massive numbers, but like I think it would certainly get the deal done. I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are, but again, I think to me this is a fair deal.
Yeah, Tyler Herro's on an expiring deal.
Mm-hmm.
For Karis's, he signed the 2-year MLE, just shy of about 30 million, and then Marcus Sasser is on that $5 million cap hit because he's still on his rookie deal. I think financially this does work. I do see some people in the comment section talking about like they like the ESPN one better, where it was in Holland, it was Stu and possibly the Pistons' 21st overall pick, which, hey, I mean, Trajan did say in the press conference, saying it's like we either trade the pick entirely or we're trading up in the draft. So that could be a possibility as well. I've seen a lot of different mock trades. I've even seen a Lakers one kind of float out there, but the Lakers one just seems like it was made by a Lakers fan of them getting Isaiah Stewart and Khalil Ware. I was like, yeah, like, come on, man. Like the gig is up.
Yeah, I think if they are to trade Isaiah Stewart, I think it would probably try to be in a separate deal. I think, not to allude, I'm sure we're probably going to be talking about this other player here in a moment, but I think the goal would be to not end up with either Trey Murphy or Tyler Herro. I think ideally, if you could end up with both somehow, I think you would want to try and make that happen. And I think that's like it's and again, like if you are going to move off of someone like Isaiah Stewart, you want to make sure it's in the right trade package. And it's like, again, I'm not saying Tyler Herro like isn't like a worthwhile acquisition, but again, it's just like I think they're trying to save him for a different acquisition.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. We'll get into the Stu stuff a little bit later. There are a few teams that are interested in trading for Isaiah Stewart. One team in particular that I would absolutely hate to see. But honestly, I think the other kind of conversation that you have to have if you are Detroit and you are a Piston fan is Tyler Herro is on an expiring deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it going to take to resign the guy? He's on a $30 million deal. I mean, are you talking, a 4 or 5 year deal to re-sign with the Pistons? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because what would his market look like if he were to hit the open market? Because it's not a lot of teams necessarily have the cap space. I wouldn't be surprised. We're seeing a lot of guys that are opting. Like Trae Young just opted out of his final year in Washington. And, a lot of people are like, oh, well, what could that mean? What's going on? More than likely, he's just signing back with the Wizards, but it's going to be on less, like annual value, but, like more guaranteed money over time. And so we're like with Tyler Herro, like I wouldn't be surprised if he were to like come back on like a 4-year, like, slightly over like $100 million deal or something that's like, slightly less or just right around the average annual value that he has. I don't necessarily see between the injury stuff and, just like getting up there in age, but also just the current way of the salary cap system. I don't really see him getting more in average annual value in the next contract. And so I think if he does come in and does play well, like I think, there is a world where you can get him on a more team friendly deal. And so I think if there's anything like we've seen, like with Trajan and Michael Blackstone and like how they operate with like the salary cap is, with someone like him, like you probably don't even have to necessarily guarantee the entire thing. Like you can add some options or you can add some, partial guarantees on the back end. So I think it'll still probably be a triple digit contract when it's all said and done. But like, I don't think his average annual value is going to be anything over like 20, 25 or 30 million on his next contract, unless he comes in and just completely, ascends to another level of Tyler Herro. But like, I think Tyler Herro is about what he is at this point. And you know what? That Tyler Herro would still be a really good fit on this Pistons team.
Yeah, I agree. We got people saying, has a trade ever happened while you're live? Last time I was live with Sean, the Mark Williams trade got rescinded from the Lakers.
Yep. That's right. it just, it's kind of funny. Like there was kind of like the thought beforehand of like, could you imagine if that happened while we're on the air? And it's like, it's probably not going to, but it is a fun thought. Would there be anyone else you'd want on the air with you other than me if something like that were to happen?
Between you and Corey probably has a bigger beef with me than you because every time he comes on, it's just like football news, like football trades happen. He was just like, I can't come on your podcast anymore, man. Like, what the hell?
It's like Brad Holmes is like, all right, it's time to make a move. Corey's live.
Yeah. I do want to answer a question from Detroit Red. He said, is it true that Herro and Cade have the same agent? Yes, they are both represented by Jeff Schwartz of Excel. So there is an agent connection there with Tyler Herro and Cade Cunningham. And
definitely doesn't hurt.
A lot of people are digging up the all-star pictures. And Tyler Herro and Cade were, cracking some jokes, getting along. So you never know. Cade could be recruiting. Duncan Robinson is really good friends with Tyler Herro. That's like one of his really close friends that he grew up with in Miami. So there's a lot of connections there. Maybe, Duncan Robinson and Cade Cunningham low-key are trying to recruit him here to Detroit.
Again, there's a lot of things that certainly make it add up and make a lot of sense. Like is Tyler Herro the best guard in basketball? Like, no, like I don't think anyone's saying he's a superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but he was an all-star for a reason, and he's someone who, he's won a lot of games, he's made a lot of big plays, and he's been involved in high-level basketball, at multiple steps in his career, which if you're looking at how do you take that next step, you want guys who know what that moment's like and know, know what it's, know what it's like to be on both sides of the coin. So, I certainly think it makes a lot of sense. It's a calculated risk, which that's every acquisition in the league, but I'm sure this has a little more risk attached to it.
I agree with it. Someone had asked, like, if we get Herro, are we able to make more moves? Yeah, I mean, you have a mid-level exception. I don't really foresee the Detroit Pistons being too active in the free agency market. I don't know if you could. Here's the bigger thing I want to talk with you about. And I've seen a lot of people bring this up as well. You fill a position of need at shooting guard, but you still have a gaping hole at power forward. That's my biggest, Tyler Herro solves the shooting, but there's reports of Tobias Harris, wanting to come back. Like, what do you do at power forward, really?
Yeah, it's such a tricky spot because you do need more production in the front court in general. And, it's like, I do think like Tobias is still a very valuable, like part of this team, as long as he's not one of your three most important players on the offensive side of the floor. Like if Tobias is able to, I think we all kind of think low key, if he's able to slip into like a sixth man role and come off the bench and be someone that can, like add energy, be that, kind of that extra coach, but also someone that, you can bring in if you need, if you just need someone to be that steady hand. Like, I think that would be like the perfect role for Tobias as he's heading into like that next phase in his career. But like, to your point, it's especially as you have a SARS contract coming up, as you have, as you have Jalen Duren, like whatever that number is going to be on your books coming up into this season, like you're not going to have a lot of room to operate. So I know a lot of people have floated around like John Collins. I'm sure, like that's someone you can at the very least inquire about. It's not the worst option in the world. I will say if they do bring in John Collins, I was thinking about this earlier. I don't want to hear jack diddly squat from fans about how dumb of a move that was if it doesn't work, because I swear half of the people at my mentions over the last 4 years have been like, bring in John Collins. It's like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my bad. You're also one of those people. Yeah. So it's like, if it doesn't work, you can't be like, oh, double tweeted. Who would have thought about bringing in John Collins? It's like, you dumbass. Like, but no. Anyway, it's like, in all seriousness, like, yeah, it's so tricky because the other, like the flip side of the coin is if there's a great front court player, a team ain't letting go of that guy, like unless you're like giving real quality assets. So that is where like, hey, is the Trey Murphy piece possible? Like, is that is that an attainable option? Do you because I mean, if you do, I'm not gonna lie, man. I know it'd be complicated to make happen financially, but a starting five of Cade, Herro, Asar, Trey Murphy, and Jalen Duren, that moves me. That moves me. I mean, again, there might be, there's some defensive and physicality questions with that lineup. You would certainly be leaning more into offense, and you would have, like, I know Trey Murphy's, like not the greatest defender. He's, probably average at best, but like, that team would certainly be able to space the floor a lot more.
Yeah.
Certainly give Cade and Duren a lot more room to operate.
I definitely want to get into the Trey Murphy stuff as well, but I did want to kind of ask you about the power forward stuff, because I think when you look at power forwards in free agency, you just mentioned John Collins, which I think he's the best power forward available on the open market. It's a UFA. Mm-hmm. There's Rui Hachimura as well, who was an absolute flamethrower in the playoffs. It seems like the guy could not miss a shot from three.
Yep.
He was going crazy. I've mentioned someone the past 2 weeks. I mentioned it with Laz, and I mentioned it with Wes, and Wes brought him up. So I was just like, okay, we're on the same brainwave. Dean Wade from the Cavs, who I think could be a very cost-effective power forward, lengthy, can defend, just not the most consistent three-point shooter. There was someone in the comment section saying, if we get Dean Wade, I'm canceling my season tickets on the spot. Yeah, I see Second Effort, who I'm actually going on his podcast tomorrow, so shout out to him. He said, I'm not going to try to pronounce the guy's last name, but Sandro from the Raptors, who's kind of in between a power forward center. I think Sandro makes a whole
you're talking about. He kind of reminds me of, ironically, his game reminds me a lot of Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. Who played for the Crews?
Yeah, I can't think of
JaMychal Porter.
Yeah.
Or no, Javante Porter. Javante Porter. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. I could see that. I mean, Javante had the strap from three as well. I honestly think when you look at, like, I know we're going down a complete like rabbit hole with like power forwards and free agents.
Yeah, Javante Porter. My bad. What's wrong with me? My gosh.
Yeah. I honestly believe if you were able to get Sandro right now, I have a feeling he's just going to pop. And whoever signs him is going to look like a freaking genius. Because back-to-back years when he was with San Antonio and Wemby was out, he looked really good. Was really good with the Raptors this year. I know some people say, hey, man, I'd give him the full MLE. Like, I'm in. Like, let's go get this guy because I think he's a very versatile 4-5.
Yeah, I think he'd be a good option, too. I mean, That is a spot that just no matter what, they're just gonna have to find some form of upgrade in. And I know I saw people like talk about like, like trade up for like Yaxel, and it's like I know like that, I know he's someone that like Michigan fans would all love to see, but it's like I don't know if you even it's someone that's older like that. I don't know if you could still just say like, hey, welcome to the Pistons. You're gonna be a starting 4 day one. Be one of our guys we can count on right away. I just again, it's like that's when talking about draft stuff, that's why I have a hard time even getting super deep into it, because it's like, all right, well, realistically, how attainable is it to find someone that can just contribute literally right away in a playoff rotation like that? Like that's just tough.
Yeah, I mean, we'll answer one more question, then we'll move on to the Mark Stein report. Second effort does have a question about Tyler Herro. It is a draft question, so I'll try to take the reins so you don't have to. Would getting Herro change who you guys want in the draft? I think when you look at 21, if they are able to keep the pick second effort, I'm under the assumption that they would probably still go for a guard, whether that's Ibuka Okori. If he does stay there, I have a good feeling that he's probably going to be anywhere from 13 to 16 in that range. That's a trade up candidate. There's conversation about Bennett Sturts out of Iowa, who is a combo guard that can just shoot the crap out of the ball. There's Christian Anderson, who I really like, who is one of the best shooters in this draft. I think they still look for a playmaker. I know I've seen some people kind of float out the idea of like an Alan Graves, possibly. I don't really know if they're going to go for like a high-level role player at 21. I think they're looking for a guard that can, come off the bench and facilitate, because that's something that Trajan had talked about in his presser, his draft presser this past week about, looking for playmaking. And he said something you can kind of read in between the lines. He's just like, I don't know if there's going to be good shooters at 21. So you can look at the prospects like an Isaiah Evans from Duke, a Malik Thomas. Maybe he believes that they possibly will go higher than they're projected in mock trades or mock drafts.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, like I know like another guy who's really made a name for himself the combine process is, like a guy who's mentioned in the comments, like Cam Carr. I don't imagine him being there at 21. Like just from like the limited stuff I've seen about him, it's like I have a hard time seeing him getting past like 15 with the skill set that he has and everything he provides. And so that's the thing that's like, on one hand, first round picks are as valuable as they've ever been, because in this current NBA with the salary cap structure, you need to be able to hit on back end rotation pieces and get guys who produce more than what the value of their contract like should entail. Right. But on the other hand, with NIL, with the way that the current college structure is, you're seeing more guys elect to go back to college for another year because you can go be the guy somewhere and make just as much, if sometimes more money than you would being like a late end, like a late first round, early second round pick. And so that's why, like, really once you get past, like, it was already kind of a crapshoot once you get past the lottery when you get into the draft. But now I feel like it's even harder. I mean, this draft, like on one hand, it's still a really good draft. And like, I think this is still like a really quality class. I think we're gonna have a lot of guys that we're going to say, wow, they can play. And I think they'll still be the case just about every year. But if you're talking about like finding those true like star potential players like deep into the draft, it'll still happen. It's just going to be a lot harder now.
Oh, 100%. I still feel you can get a pretty good value prospect at 21, but to your point, yeah, NAL is just completely ruined it. I will say, if Ron is involved in a trade, there is a wing that I could see the Pistons drafting out of Texas. I could see them drafting Swain. He's a shooting guard, small forward type, similar size, 6'7", 6'8". Only knock on him is he just can't shoot, but he's a good a good defender. He's a good defender, man. Hit me with the 6'7". But did want to answer that question. But I mean, we talked about Tyler Herro for 30 minutes, man. Like that's just, we got a lot of thoughts on it.